Here's Mr. Ace again, and I'm going to do some sacking out with the saddle cloth just to see if maybe the saddle might be some of his issue that makes him anxious. So you can see he's quite calm. There's not much action in his tail. Not much action really anywhere. A little bit of flicking, but not a lot. There are a few flies around too, but there's not much we can do about the flies. So you'll see I'll put the saddle cloth on him, and when he shows me that he's standing still, I'll take it off and back away from him until he's quite comfortable with it being there, which he is. And I don't need to do the same with this one because he's already comfortable with the saddle cloth. So and I'm not being too gentle about it. You know, people that, especially teenagers that take up horses or kids, they want to get it done in a hurry, so they're going to just throw it all on, and you know, he needs to get used to that. Notice his tail's a little bit more active at the moment. Was. And his head's a lot more active. I'm not letting him eat the grass. He can scratch himself and do all that sort of stuff, that's fine. But when he's working, he's not supposed to be eating and paying attention. I also haven't tied him up, and the reason for that is I want to teach him to be saddled before I start tying him up, so that he's not worried about it and shouldn't move around on the lead too much. I don't tie them very tight when I do tie them. I tie them quite loose. Some people say that's dangerous. I say tying them tight can be more so. If you haven't taught them to do all these things before you tie them up. They should be able to move away from things if they need to, a little bit. And if they're taught not to eat and stuff now before they get tied up, chances are they won't when they get tied up, so therefore they're not going to get their feet over the rope. Touch wood, I haven't had a horse that did get its foot over the rope and get itself into trouble. So he's not reacting to much that I'm doing, which is good. You know, the girl that owns this horse, when she saddled him up, he would move around a lot, and he was quite obviously uncomfortable. I don't know whether that's because I've done a lot of work with him and he's got more respect, or different environment. Could be a whole manner of other things. Now as I bring him in here, notice how anxious he will get, and I'm asking him exactly the same things as we've asked before with the bridle on and before with nothing on except the halter. His head's up a little bit. He's sort of a bit nervous, wondering what's going on. But it's all the same stuff we've done before. Now I don't know why he turned there. I'd never asked him to turn. My whip was quiet. And I don't know why he's doing this behaviour. Like I said, he was quite nervous when we got in here. This isn't anything new to him. He's done all this before. He's going to try and eat grass, see what he can get away with, see what the right answer is. I'm going to send him away again. When he pays attention, he's ignoring me, seeing if he can get away with that. Okay, so I get louder with my whip and my body language until I get the right answer, and then the pressure comes off. So he's chosen to go around like that quite quickly. That's a good thing. You know, when I say go, they should move. I'm not worried about where his head is. If he wants to stick it down on the ground like that and stretch, that's fine. Okay, so it's hard for me to describe what I'm actually doing with my body language. That's just something you're going to have to watch for yourselves. But there's a lot of subtle things that go on that he's picking up on, because horses communicate with body language, not a lot with verbal. They usually communicate with us a little bit verbally, like the knickers when you go and feed them and so forth. They'll call out to each other when they can't find each other and that sort of stuff, but generally in a herd situation they communicate with body language. So I'm sort of mimicking that. And that just comes with watching horses and how horses tell each other where they are. And horses decide who their leader is all the time. You know, it's not like us where we vote for our, you know, country leaders every 3 years or whatever it is, depending on where you live. They're doing it all the time, you know, they're testing boundaries, seeing where they fit into the herd. And that's all he's doing. He's not being a bad horse, he's not being nasty, he's not being anything other than a horse. And seeing where he stands. So the aim of this session is to basically do exactly what we've done before with the saddle on. And he's finding it quite difficult, which is interesting, because he could do it with the bridle on, he could do it without the bridle on, and then we put the saddle on and suddenly his attitude changes a bit. So that's interesting. Notice how he's not crowding over the top of me now. He's sort of standing back a little bit. That's where we want our horses to be. You don't want them crowding over the top of you, because that sort of means that they're higher and you don't want them higher on the pecking order, so to speak. You want to be the higher one. So they need to respect your personal space. Horses have personal space as well. Okay, so he chooses to run off. That's fine. I'm not going to reprimand him for that. He's allowed to if he wants to. He's completely at liberty. I don't have any ropes or anything pulling on him or anything like that. I do have a whip for a bit of encouragement, because he is a little bit on the stubborn side and a little bit testy, you know. He's the boss of his herd in the paddock, so he thinks that he's the boss of them all. So he's just, you know, one that's going to test me out. And that's fine. You know, I quite like a horse with a bit of attitude, because it improves me as, you know, in what I do. I don't call myself a trainer. I'm just, I just play with horses. Alright, so now I'm going to run around him, because he's quite anxious and worried for some reason. So I'm just going to play a little game with him. And eventually he's going to stand there and look at me and think, well, she's not pressuring me to do anything, and when I run away she laughs at me, so Maybe I'll just stand still and watch her run around, because that seems to be what she does when I run around. I don't know if that goes through his head, but it seems to just settle the horses down a bit. There he goes, runs away. The guy goes, what is she doing? Alright, so he's sort of following me now. He's sort of thinking, I'm not quite sure what's going on here. This mad woman's running around the round pen. Oh, maybe I'll just stand still. So this horse is quite a reactive horse, a little bit of an anxious horse. He's not too spooky, I wouldn't say, but he's just a bit reactive, which is fine. But we want him also to be nice and quiet and calm, and there's sort of a fine balance between the two. So at the moment he's going sort of nervous and doesn't know what to do, to calm, to nervous, to calm. And that's good. That's good for him to sort of know how to settle himself a little bit, so that when something massive happens, he doesn't just react with, you know, something massive like a buck or a, you know. If we can get him to the point where he can settle himself down a little bit, then you're going to have a much more versatile animal. Okay, so he just stood still, he calmed down. I don't know if you saw his body language too much because of the camera angle where he is. But, you know, he sort of stopped being so worried about what I was doing. I wasn't asking him to do anything, I was just running around being funny. Okay, now I've asked him to come with me, which he's done quite nicely. And I'm going to send him out and ask him to do the small circle exercise as we've done many, many times before. And this is the exercise I was trying to initially get him to do. But he was just too nervous for some reason. Why he's more nervous with the saddle on?
He wants to run.
I don't know. But I'm asking him to change directions, to come in and face me. I do move around a lot. A lot of people sort of just stand still and run to the horse, but my horses have trained me to walk around. No, eventually I will be able to stand fairly still, but at the moment he needs some things explained to him. He's sort of forgotten the lessons. But eventually it'll get to the point where I can just point at him and send him out whichever way I want to send him. Okay, so he's buggered off again, that's fine. Buggering off just means more work, you know. I was quite happy for him to walk around in a small circle on both ways. But if he wants to trot off and carry on, well, that's more work for him, and eventually they'll figure that one out for themselves. And it gets to the point where we can do these exercises outside the round yard eventually. So he sort of invents brick walls, which seems to be a thoroughbred thing. A lot of thoroughbreds will back up when you start to put contact on their mouth. Or if you start putting them under pressure, they'll back up, like as if there's a brick wall in front of them. He just won't, you know, they just don't like to go forward for some reason sometimes. They get this brick wall mentality where they think there's a wall in front of them. They don't think that, but that's the sort of human explanation for it. Seems to be only thoroughbreds. I haven't seen any other horse do it. Doesn't mean they don't, just, you know, in my experience, I haven't had any other breed that does it. There we go. So I don't mind how he turns at the moment. I'm not too concerned because he's so worried about things. I just want to explain to him that it's the same exercise as before. It's no different. And eventually he might just do it nice and calmly like he is now, without stressing too much.